Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's Rock Harbor Church Prophecy Update. As you know, it's our desire to bring the events that are happening in the world from a biblical perspective and also a prophetic perspective. So we want to thank you for joining us today. The theme that we want to work with this week that we're seeing is the question, are we really seeing this? And the reason I ask that question is there are things happening that we just simply cannot believe we're seeing. Now, we know that the last days were predicted. We know that the prophets predicted how things would go. And we do know that we have our great hope of the rapture and that the Lord's going to come back for us and take us. But before that time, we're starting to see the table set for the end times, for the tribulation period. We're seeing things set for Israel, things set for the world. And sometimes, even as a Christian, knowing what is predicted, it's really starting to get hard to fathom what we're seeing in front of us. It is like living in modern day Sodom and Gomorrah. It is like living in the days of Noah, as the Lord predicted. And so we're seeing a lot of crazy things. If you recall, there was a passage in Jeremiah 19:5. The Lord was chastising Israel, and he told about Israel in verse 5, they have also built the high places of Baal, to burn their sons with fire for burnt offerings to Baal, which I did not command or speak, nor did it come into my mind. And that's an interesting thing that was happening. Obviously, the Israelites were offering their children up to Baal, much like people are offering up their children in abortion. And we're seeing basically the Baal worshipers, the Baal worshipers, however you want to pronounce it, happening today. We are offering up our children on that altar. And obviously the Lord was going to send Israel into exile because of that, but he was telling them, I did not command you to do that, nor did I speak of that. But then he says an interesting phrase, nor did it come into my mind. Now that phrase is a kind of a anthropomorphism. He's speaking like a human being, even though we know God is omniscient and he knows all. But he was saying basically to the children of Israel, that the kind of evil that you're doing, for instance, offering up your children as burnt offerings to Baal, that kind of evil doesn't even come into my mind. He's using a euphemism, an anthropomorphism to say your evil is beyond comprehension. It's ridiculous what you're doing. It's beyond measure. It's wickedness. And so he chastises Israel saying this is an evil that goes beyond human capabilities. And obviously what it was demonic. There's no doubt about that. And we're starting to see that our culture is doing things today that it's hard to conceive of. It just, you would think as a Bible believer, how did these people get this evil? How did these people start thinking like this? Well, it's obviously demonically inspired. But we wanted to show you a couple of examples, and this is where the question comes. Are we really seeing this? And the answer, obviously, to all these examples that I'm going to show today is, yes, we are, which signals that we're living in the last days. So Prophecy News Watch reports that many Christian universities have come under fire for using statements of faith as a means to uphold their religious mission. Well, Trinity Western University in British Columbia saw its entire law program go up in smoke after various provincial bar associations would not accept its law program due to discriminatory practices, which basically was a statement of their faith based on the Bible. So what they were saying is that the Bible is discriminatory. And we live in a free society where free speech is championed, and yet these religious colleges and universities are now getting things taken away from them for being discriminatory because they use the Bible as their basis for their statement of faith. That's where this is going, guys. Are we really watching this? Yes, we are. That's how bad things have gotten. In another example, CBN News reports that Peter Vlaming was a well-liked French teacher at West Point High School in Virginia. But late last year, Vlaming was fired because he refused to call a 9th grade student who had transitioned from female to male by the student's new preferred pronoun, he. He said this, I could not, in good conscience, based on my Christian faith, call a girl a boy. Vlaming agreed to use the student's new name, but since he wouldn't refer to the biological girl as a he or a him, he was placed on administrative leave in October of 2018. Well, good for him for taking a stand. Good for him for taking a stand for Genesis and the Bible. But it did cost him his job. He's placed on administrative leave. But a lot of Christians are now coming under that kind of fire, and we're seeing this everywhere. So are we really seeing this? Yes. Think about the apostasy in the church that's happening all over the place. Rampant apostasy. This is reported by Christian Headlines that city officials in Leander, Texas, found themselves mired in controversy after the city's library announced that it would host a drag queen story hour. And we have known that many libraries, even here in California, have had these drag queens come in and read little preschoolers and kindergartners stories to them dressed in full drag. It's about as sick as you could possibly get. But let's get even deeper on this. The library wanted to host this event, but the church in the community announced that they would rent a room at the library and host the event themselves. The church, this apostate church called Open Cathedral, which is kind of a new church that meets in a local elementary school there, is going to host this drag queen event on June 15th. And the pastor is quoted by saying, "We must never stop striving for safe spaces for our kids to be unique and love no matter what." Right out of the mouth of a dragon, right out of the mouth of a serpent. This is an apostate pastor, no doubt about that. The church pastor, who is supposedly an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, said he founded the church because, get this, quote, he was tired of the church sucking, unquote. On his website, the church claims to be open and affirming, saying that they want to be ever more open to and affirming of all people by embracing similarities and embracing differences in age, race, ethnicity, income level, ability, get this, sexual orientation, and gender expression. Spoken like a true false teacher. Spoken like a true apostate. That's what we're seeing. Are we really seeing this? Yes, we are really seeing this. In another article by ToddStarnes.com, he reports of a racially charged prayer delivered by Baylor University's 2019 commencement by Dan Freemeyer, who is the pastor of Broadway Baptist Church in Fort Worth. Get this, folks. He said in this commencement speech, quote, "God, give them the moral imagination to reject the old keys we are trying to give them to a planet that we are poisoning by ruining it with fossil fuels and misplaced priorities. A planet with too many straight white men like me behind the steering wheel while others have been expected to sit quietly in the back of the bus." That's what he prayed, guys. What kind of apostate is this guy? Save the planet, radical environmentalism. He's touting the white privilege thing and this self-hatred. This guy's a pastor? No, he's an impastor or imposter, we should call him. He is an apostate. So are we really seeing this? Are we really seeing pastors do this? Of course we are. It's the signs of the times. Prophetic News also gives an example of things that are going haywire. It notes that there are many fine pastors in America, no doubt about that. There's a remnant of pastors that are doing great, and they're devoted to serving the Lord and serving the flocks that the Lord has given them. And it's becoming very harder and harder to find these kinds of pastors and these types of churches that are committed to the Word of God and committed to doing the work of the Lord. These kind of pastors, again, a rarity. Many people cannot find a good church in the area. And they sound the alarm when necessary, like we're trying to sound it. Folks, if you're at a church and your pastor is not sounding the alarm, he doesn't talk about current events because he thinks he's going to be too political. If your church is not making you aware of the Sodom and Gomorrah that's happening in our culture, of the infanticide that's happening in our culture through abortion, if they're not talking about Israel, if they're not talking about the Middle East, if they're not talking about the formation of the one world government and the one world religion, the false religion, or the great apostasy, you should start questioning why they're not talking about it. The pastor is a watcher on the wall. He should be sounding the alarm. But unfortunately, the majority of pastors in my profession do not sound the alarm. They are not a watcher on the wall. They don't know what's happening. They are willfully ignorant of the signs of the times. For them, and even more, their congregations are lost, are blind, and for this we should be deeply concerned. So at the same time, all these things are happening. Most pastors, most congregations, most Christians are completely out to lunch on what's happening around them. It's almost like they've buried their head in the sand and maybe don't want to know all this is happening, that the whole world is crumbling down in front of them and around them. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a psychological thing of not wanting to admit reality, to stay out of reality. I don't know, but it's sure happening to a lot of churches, a lot of pastors, and a lot of Christians. Are we really seeing this where the pastors, the majority of pastors, are ignorant of the signs of the times? Yes, we're really seeing this. In another example, according to Breitbart's report, check this out. The best candidate we know for the false prophet, the Pope Francis, said Thursday that it is a mistake for the church to try to hold on to old traditions or to have clear answers for everything. That's interesting. The Pope is intentionally being vague. His ambiguity on black and white theological issues should cause an alarm, and his lack of doctrinal clarity is basically anti-Christian. Watch out for this guy. This guy is no doubt, he looks like a lamb, but he speaks like a dragon. Again, if we were throwing up candidates of who could be the false prophet, this guy's in the running. And again, I'm not saying that he is. I'm just saying this guy looks and says and does everything the false prophet will do. Now, the false prophet could be someone else, but I'm just saying, if the false prophet comes, he ought to take note of what Pope Francis is doing. This guy is leading the way towards a one-world religion. No doubt about that. Are we really seeing the formation of a one-world religion? Yes, we are. Also speaking about the Pope, CBN News reports that Pope Francis is pushing for steps towards global authority that supersedes the rights of individual countries. Get that. All with the goal of pursuing the common good on issues like climate change and immigration. This guy's worried about the false hoax of climate change and immigration rather than the salvation of souls. That ought to tell you something. And this guy's pushing for a global government that supersedes nations like the United States and Israel and whatnot. So we're having a guy who's promoting a one-world religion and now is pushing for a one-world government. Sounds to me like the false prophet. I could be wrong. I'm not going to be dogmatic. But this guy says everything right now that the false prophet will eventually say and do. It is utterly amazing. If we are in the last days, it's perhaps the very thing that you're watching could turn into the false prophet. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Are we really seeing this? Of course we are. Another example, according to Prophecy Newswatch, the upcoming peace plan between Israel and the Palestinians that Donald Trump Jr. is suggesting. Some leaks have come out, and they're suggesting that the Palestinians might receive billions of dollars as a means for peace. I hope this is not true. I hope this is false information. But given the Palestinians billions of dollars will do nothing for them. Because right now, any money they do receive And they were receiving money from the United States until Trump cut that off. It only stayed at the top. And some of the most palatial places on earth were being built in the Palestinian Authority by the elitists of the Palestinians, while the rest of them starve to death, basically. So giving them more money is not going to help out. That's actually going to fuel more terrorism from them. And they're going to pay people to be suicide bombers and whatnot. I hope this is wrong. I hope we as Americans don't give the Palestinians any money until they clean up their terrorism and their terrorist tactics and their desire to want to wipe Israel off the face of the map. If they continue to have that attitude, don't give them a penny. Don't give them a dime until they change their attitude. But I don't think they can ever change their attitude because it's tied to their religion, Islam. Are we really seeing all this? Yes, we are. Fox News reports that an Islamic militant who became known as the infamous American Taliban member, get this, is set to be released from a U.S. federal prison on Thursday, despite lawmakers' concerns about the security and safety implications on freeing an unrepentant terrorist who officials say continues to openly call for extremist violence. So we're going to let a terrorist out, the American Taliban guy. We're going to let him out. And what do you think he's going to do? He's going to join right back up with his old buddies, and they're going to plot something again. You'll watch. This guy will be involved in something. Everybody we release ends up somehow hurting us again. And so this is very concerning. And I hope the FBI, CIA keep watch on him, but I don't have that much confidence that they're going to do anything to him. Are we really seeing terrorists being released from our federal prisons? Yeah. Well, another example of are we really seeing what we're seeing? Prophecy News Watch reports that a transgender identity may have cost a baby its life. That was the headlines. Well, what was the problem? The problem was that doctors thought that a patient in question was an obese male having stomach pains who came into the ER. The he, and I use the term he loosely because it was really a she, identified as a male. And quote unquote, his electronic paperwork said he was a male. Only he wasn't. He was a pregnant woman. That's what he was. So she basically was losing her baby. That's what was happening in the ER. Well, they didn't know she was a she because she had put down that she was a he. As reported by Gateway Pundit, a pregnant woman living as a transgender male arrived to the hospital with severe abdominal pains. And nurses didn't immediately consider it an emergency because she appeared to be an obese man who had stopped taking blood pressure medication. They didn't think she was having a baby. She looked like a guy. If you see the pictures of her, she looks like a guy. Well, had the hospital realized what was going on and had this person informed them that, hey, I have a baby inside of me, they might have been able to save the baby. Instead, a child is dead now because of this. That's why it behooves the medical profession to start drawing lines in the sand and saying, hey man, we care deeply about those all individuals, and we want to support them and help them. But when it comes to treating physical conditions, you got to tell us your biology. That's the problem. And they won't do it, I don't think. In fact, these biological realities between males and females, which God made, you can't get away from. These are not matters of opinion. These are not matters of how you feel or perception or preference. They're stubborn facts. If you want to go against facts, go against medical, biology, chemistry, then you can do so, but you do it at your own peril. And now they put another person's life in peril. A baby died because the woman is not smart enough to say, oh, by the way, I'm a female and I have a baby inside of me. So the baby died in her. So these kinds of mentalities, they are insane and they affect other people. You cannot sin in isolation. Are we really seeing this? Did we really see a woman pretending to be a man have this happen to it in a hospital? Of course we did. That's how crazy things are becoming. In another example, according to Daily Wire, the Alabama Public Television has made a decision not to air the episode of PBS's Arthur. Good for them. And you say, why? Well, Arthur, which is a cartoon for children, shows in one of its episodes a male character getting married to a man. Are we really seeing this? Yes. They're doing it in the cartoons, can you believe it, to indoctrinate our kids. As Christian Headlines previously reported in the episode, which aired May 13th nationally, Arthur, this cartoon character, and his friends attend their teacher, Mr. Ratburn's wedding. They don't know how he is marrying until they see him walking down the aisle with another man. And after the nuptials, Arthur recaps the events with his friends. One of them says, yep, it's a brand new world. And People magazine speculated this could be a nod to the changing times. No, it's not a brand new world. It's actually going back to Sodom and Gomorrah. That's what it really is. And you can only expect one thing when the world turns into Sodom and Gomorrah: judgment. That's what's expected. And the judgment that's going to come is called the tribulation. It'll be the wrath of the Lamb for our world becoming like this. When you indoctrinate kids, the cartoon Arthur is for like preschool children, kindergarten, first grade, second grade age. They're already trying to indoctrinate our kids. Be careful what your kids watch, because now their cartoons cannot be trusted. Are we really seeing this Sodom and Gomorrah mentality in cartoons? Yes. In another example, CBN News reports a high school located in southeastern Pennsylvania was scheduled, get this, to host a drag queen show during school hours on Wednesday. It's a part of an all-day event highlighting LGBTQ issues at school. So check this out. Public schools are now having drag queen shows. How would you like to send your kid to a public school and know that that day they're going to have a drag queen show for your kid to watch? Why are they doing this? Because they're indoctrinating. These people who run their schools, who have these public schools, who have destroyed the public schools, are now destroying the morality of our kids in the public schools. Again, think twice about putting your kid into a public school if they're going to have drag queen shows. This is insane. Are we really seeing this? You better believe we're seeing this. And this is another shock to our system. Reported by Christian Headlines. A new Gillette ad showing a father teaching, get this, his transgender quote-unquote son how to shave has been viewed more than 1 million times on Facebook and ignited, obviously, social media debate. Again, Gillette knows no boundaries. The ad shows Toronto's Samson Bonki Bantu Brown, who was born a female, talking about transgenderism. Quote, he says, "I always knew I was different," Brown says. "I didn't know that there was a term for the type of person that I was. I went into my transition just wanting to be happy. I'm glad I'm at the point where I'm able to shave." So this guy, or girl, which is a girl, is taking some type of hormones that allows her to have facial hair, so now she can shave like a guy. This is how sick and twisted things are becoming here, guys. And he says, "I wanted to do it to become happy." By the way, people who do this actually get very depressed, and there's high reports of suicide among people who are trying to become something they're not. Well, anyway, the Gillette ad then shows Brown standing over a bathroom sink, holding a razor. Brown's father gives instructions. He quote, "Now don't be scared. Shaving is about being confident," he says. Brown says at one point, "I'm at the point in my manhood," and she's not a man, "where I'm actually happy," she says. "It's not just myself transitioning," Brown says. "It's everybody around me transitioning." Viewers then read a message from Gillette shavers. "Whenever, wherever, however it happens, your first shave is special." Hey, by the way, I ain't buying any more Gillette razors anymore. If they're going to be pushing this down my throat, I am done with Gillette. I'm sick and tired of this being shoved down my throat. This is insanity. These people are having major problems, and they're just being allowed to go into this insanity. And everyone keeps pushing on this and shoving it down our throats. At some point, you got to say no more. We're done. I'm sick and tired of it. And again, we feel like what Lot felt in Sodom and Gomorrah. If we feel vexed in our spirit, what do we do? Is the idea. Well, again, are we really seeing this? Yes. In another example, Canadian Free Press reported in an era where 4 out of 10 Americans approve of socialism. Can you believe that? And one in which the progressive Dems have jumped into the tank with Sanders-led Justice Democrats. Fox News garnered Sanders some 2.6 million viewers in their first town hall. Folks, the younger generation doesn't understand socialism. They think it's brand new. They think it's great because they're going to get a lot of free stuff. But they have no idea about history. They don't know all the wars we fought against communism, socialism, Marxism. They don't understand history, that this stuff doesn't work economically, that it bleeds the country to death. You simply can't give free stuff away and expect to last very long. Look at Venezuela, look at Cuba, look at all these countries, Russia, communist China, that practice economic socialism or economic Marxism. All of it destroys them, and yet we have a whole mess of people, especially the millennials, which number 80 million, largest population demographics in the American society, wanting socialism, wanting Bernie Sanders, wanting free education, free healthcare, free this, free that. It's going to destroy us. And unfortunately, the colleges and universities, the public schools, don't do anything to offset this. They are telling the kids capitalism or free marketism is bad, it's greedy. How dare they do that? And again, we're not for crony capitalism or unbridled capitalism. We want a moral capitalism. But a free market is as close as we can get to an equitable economy. If you go socialism, you go Marxism, communism, you will destroy everyone in your path with that economically. And so it's just hard to imagine that all these people, especially these younger generations, want socialism. Are we really seeing this? Yes, we're really seeing this. The Daily Wire also reported this week that NPR has issued a guidance reminder instructing journalists on which words and phrases they should avoid and which they should employ when reporting on abortion issues. So I guess now, they don't want to use words that would signal, hey, you're killing a baby. So they're guiding it away from, instead of murder or infanticide, a woman's rights, a woman's freedom, her right to her body. Instead of saying, no, you're killing babies, you're murdering babies. They don't want to use those terms. So now they're giving journalists the right words to use. Isn't that amazing? Exactly what you want to do if you want to change the debate. You change the vocabulary. And that's what they're doing. Are we really seeing that? Yeah. Check this out. The Daily Wire reports that Planned Parenthood, the abortion mill factory of America, was asked to help revise the Colorado Secretary of State's press release announcing restricted travel to Alabama. As you recall, Alabama just passed a law that would ban nearly all abortions in the state, and we applaud that. So now Planned Parenthood is jumping on board and saying, hey, we got to do something to restrict travel to Alabama. We're going to hurt them for doing this. And so things like that are happening, especially when people take a stand for the innocent, for the stand for innocent babies. And of course, Planned Parenthood is an evil organization, and they would look to destroy anyone that stands in their path. Remember, these are the ones who are selling baby parts, guys. 99% of what they do is strictly abortions. Planned Parenthood is evil. Watch out for that group. Are we really watching this? Yes. According to Daily Wire, on Friday, Missouri Governor Mike Parsons, who's a Republican, signed into law one of the most pro-life laws in the nation, outlawing abortion at 8 weeks, save an exception for the life or risk of major physical harm to the mother. Amen, and we applaud him for that. And this legislation does not include the exception for rape, incest, sex, ability, race-selective abortions are also banned outright. Good for him. But remember, when someone does this, they get a lot of pushback. This guy will get death threats. But God bless them that there's some people still taking a stand in leadership. Are we really seeing this? Yes. The Daily Wire reports that multiple people were hurt late on Friday last week in an explosion near a bakery in the French city of Lyon. A French President, Emmanuel Macron, described it as an attack, and that's how he left it. But unfortunately, it wasn't an attack. It was a terrorist Islamic attack. As Pamela Geller noted, French police have arrested a 24-year-old Algerian computer student suspected of planning a bomb in Lyon last week that wounded the 13 people, causing a lot of casualties, including a little girl who was 8, who suffered leg wounds after a parcel packed with nails, nuts, bolts, and screws exploded when the bomb went off. 3 other people were arrested in connection with the case, which is being treated as a terrorism investigation. The attack came as France remains on alert following a wave of terror attacks. This is Ramadan, folks, and this month of Ramadan, we see high levels of Islamic terrorism. This is the month of jihad and conquest according to Islam. And that's what they're doing. As we see all around the world that Muslims decide to go and kill and maim and commit terrorist acts towards Christians and other people, and that's exactly what's happening. The French don't want to talk about it because they have a problem on their hands with so many Islamic migrants into their country. They'll have a civil war if they come out and say it. So they just say it's an attack. They don't say it's Islamic an attack. And of course, you don't see any media coverage on these bombings of this little girl and the victims, do you? But it's happening all over the world. And Islam is the biggest perpetrator, the main perpetrator of this. And Ramadan is the month they do a lot of their activities. It's not a month of prayer and fasting. It is a month of jihad, is what it really is. Are we really seeing all this? Are we really seeing Big Brother take control? Let me give it an example. The Daily Wire has reported an ad for Dennis Prager's documentary, No Safe Spaces, which focuses on the stifling of free speech on college campuses, has been rejected by Facebook because the buyer of the ad will not identify as partisan. According to the Hollywood Reporter, Facebook recently implemented a new policy that requires organizations to disclose their political affiliations when purchasing an ad related to issues of national importance. The rule has led to an apolitical organizations having their ads blocked, including fundraisers for veterans. So basically, Facebook wants you to tell them what you are, whether you're Democrat or Republican or whatever, left, conservative, whatever. They want you to tell them what you are, and if you're on the wrong side, they block you. And so if you decide to stay neutral or apolitical, they block you as well. So this is what we're seeing with the social media people, is they're clamping down on alternative opinions, especially coming from conservatives, coming from Christians or whatnot, and not allowing those opinions to go through the free market. So again, are we really seeing this? Yes, we are being marginalized as Christians. One more last thing. We want to thank everyone that has contributed to our building fund. We're raising money to build a building, and we thank you for that. All that you have given will surely be a blessing to us and will help us and to further along our path to get to our building and out of a school. So we want to thank all of you out there for helping us in that endeavor. And this brings us to our conclusion today. We want to thank you for joining us. Watch us next week as we discern the signs of the times and see things through the lens of Scripture. And remember what Jesus said, when you see these things begin to happen, look up, lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. God bless you. We'll see you next week.